when our life begins is with the parents. And the second most important interaction that we have is with our siblings. The siblings that whom we interact with are more of a silent mirror who show us a little version of ourselves, right, Tanveer?
Yes, very true. As we progress in life, our dynamics and our relationship with our siblings actually forms on how we interact with the social and the outer world more. How, it evolves more from the emotional entanglements, the emotional ability to deal with how you deal with your siblings, right? So whether it's jealousy, whether it's anger, whether it's competition, whether you feel that bonding that you have with your siblings, all right, actually plays out in your adult life too, in terms of how you bond, how you perceive other people. If there is a lot of competition and there is a lot of jealousy between siblings, and that's what has been, as a matter of fact, that's how it has been developed between the siblings also, and parents do play a big role in that. All right. The adult life, you will always be in that mode of seeking validation, trying to get better than the other, whether it's in your work life, whether it's in your friends, whether it's studies, then you're always, so there could be a positive aspect to it too. Yeah. However, if you're in the constant that mode, then there is no feeling of good enough or self-worthiness, right? So the dynamics that we play between the siblings, how they bond and how the fighting that they have and how they resolve that fight and how they move forward, whether there's that sharing, caring, or there is always that fight for attention, and all those kind of things actually play out in our adult life.
They're also labeled, right? We're all it's a unsaid rule. And also sometimes it's a very formalized kind of labeling that is done in every household, right? Where one person is the dependable one, somebody is labeled as a careless one person is the rebel without the cause, right? One is the shy, one is the introvert. And somehow these labels stay on, right? But each of these labels, let's take the example of the first one, right? The dependable one. For some odd reason, the eldest one is always deemed as the dependable one, right?
Yeah.
Because they have this unsaid burden on their shoulder that they've been assigned to take care of the rest of them.
Yeah.
Which sometimes, Tanveer, I feel is really unfair. Because to be honest, everybody is responsible in a household. And if you share that responsibility, not everybody gets that fair share to have that interaction with the rest of them, sharing the burden, right?
True.
At the same time, the youngest ones are always the rebels for some odd reason. It is just that this one household churns out different personalities, because the strangest fact is that every child witnesses a different version of their parent.
True.
As they grow, right?
Yeah.
So
even when they say, go ahead.
So the first child is subject to all experiments, right? Everybody is the first grandchild. Feed him this, feed her this, put them to this school, take them here, take them out. So that child is subject to all experiments, right? And then that pressure that, oh my God, we've given so much to this child. This child will be like the beacon of hope for our family, which is so much pressure.
Yeah. True. And that's what they say. Even if you are brought up in this home, as siblings, we don't have the same parents.
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
the parent changes and evolves from like the first child to the second child and the third child, and as how many ever that is. So even if you are in the same household, you do not have the same childhood. You do not have the same parents as such. The whole experience of parents it's an experience. So the experience is very different.
Yeah.
And you normally see like where the parent is overly protective for the first child. By the time it's the second or the third child, they are like really carefree, leaving them independent, free, and all of that, and that kind of thing. Because they also learn and evolve. And sometimes it's just about the capacity of the parent to do what they can do. Also, most important as we're looking at sibling relationships in the absence of parents makes a lot of difference. So if there is, say, if the parent has gone out for a day or has gone out and the siblings are alone at home, now that kind of equation, whether it's a lot of bonding, If they are really bonding and they are playing together and watching TV and having fun together, that's one dynamics. And that gives you the sense of security and safety to the sibling in the absence of parents. Because first, parents are the first sense of safety and security. But beyond that, so when they grow up and go out into the world, they have a better sense of safety and security amongst the other people beyond the parents as such. So they grow up feeling much better compared to an equation where with sibling there is one who's a big bully and who's always bullying or who's always manipulating and is always demanding, like, he becomes and is abusive, whatever that is. And bullying can be in different ways. It could be physical bullying and like really beating up the other one. And it doesn't have to be the eldest one bullying the younger one. All right. It can be the other way around. Also, one of them doing that.
One of them.
Or it could be the
one of them
emotional
is
bullying.
always
So it could be the emotional bullying that if you do this, I'll do that, and scaring the other person. Now that child actually turns out to be like, if it doesn't have the security system or the parents around, they grow up as an adult feeling more fearful, for example, or more suppressed. In the work environment would be bullied by the boss, or in the friends would be bullied by friends. In relationship bullied by being more suppressed and by the partner. However, that it can play out as an adult. So the relationship that we have in terms of with our sibling does play on who we become as we grow old. And then we play the same role. Like you said, the labels, right? If the person is very dependable and responsible, that's what he or she is going to play out all the life. Or if the person is a rebel, so that person gets labeled as rebel and will be rebelling, whether it's in the office space, whether it's with friends, with other social economic situations, or if it's a peacemaker, like, someone is like, okay, it is always is labeled as very shy and always who always listens and who's very nice and is a good boy and a good girl. All right. And if they're labeled as that, and this child actually forms this responsibility that I have to be a good boy and a good girl. And
these boxes were not created by us, but this was by social conditioning. And the bigger part is to break these boxes and actually rediscover who we are, right?
True.
The siblings also teach us to work cohesively in the spirit of a team, right? So each of us have to carve our own niche and coexist at the same time. It's a very delicate balance. And we learn that pretty early as we face life, right?
Yeah, as you rightly said, it's important to recognize these patterns. And you can be responsible without having to carry it everywhere and carefree at the same time, right? So you recognize when you look at your childhood and you say, okay, this is how, and as we grow in our 40s, 50s, a lot of us do recognize that, okay, this is coming from there, right? The first step is, of course, awareness. The second thing is the moment you're aware, okay, this is how it is. Can you make a different choice? Yes, you can make a different choice. Are you willing to not be a peacemaker? Are you willing to not be the nice person, the good girl or the bad girl, the good girl or the good boy role, so that you can be yourself? Are you willing to stop that self-sacrificing, people-pleasing behavior so that you can stand up for yourself? So a lot of these things, the moment you recognize it, you know that you can make a different choice. It doesn't matter. And it takes courage to make a different choice. All right. But the moment you step into it, you take that action, however small it may be. Sometimes because the fear comes in, right? And the moment you want to make a change, okay, I don't want to be this people-pleasing person, or I don't like this title of being the responsible or the dependable one. I can be dependent, but I don't need to have the title of it. It's okay to be sometimes irresponsible. It's okay to be carefree at times, just to accept yourself, because we all have our other side of personality.
Absolutely. So only one person doesn't have to step up in every circumstance, right? Why should somebody take on that role for all their life, right? As we grow, our role changes. Why? Somewhere we have to draw a line, right? We've spoken about boundaries all the time, right? As we grow as human beings, as we grow into adulthood, even our relationship with our siblings should essentially change into more adult conversation, wherein if a person was a bully in our childhood, we should consciously push back and take the power back and say that this behavior is not acceptable anymore, right? Similarly, if we were given that huge responsibility that your younger ones are looking up at you, or your other brothers and sisters are looking up at you, you should set an example. No, we are not here to set any examples for anybody. they have their own life, they have their own way of living, they have their own choices that they will make. So we have to be very prudent with ourselves and the people at large, saying that these are the boxes that were created for me as a child. I didn't have the courage or the confidence to push back on those things. But now I'm grown up, I have my own sensibility, and I am not going to be either pushed in those boxes or going to adhere to those boxes. It doesn't feel right. That important step to be taken is definitely the one of courage. And it takes a lot of confidence to go ahead and do that. And I think that works out better for everybody, right? You are stopping the bully from continuing that bad behavior. You're stopping the person who's overburdened with responsibility, with liberation, right? You're just breaking free enough to be that individual self that you are meant to be.
Right? True. So the first step is, and how do you have that courage or the confidence? It's okay, you need to have courage. I don't have the courage or the confidence. You start small. You start with small steps. You don't have to go and fight out over there, and that you don't have to win the battles. But a small no at some point of time, or a small action of letting go of the responsibility, okay, with certain things not going your way, for example, or these kind of small things actually then build up from there to have that courage and give you that courage and the confidence. That's okay to make that change.
Absolutely. And just off late, Tanvir, I've just seen somewhere, I was just seeing one of the podcasts, and this is somewhere in the US apparently, where children have refused to be in touch with their parents because of toxic relationships. I'm no expert to comment on that, but I really feel that running away from a situation like this is not really a solution. Yes, there is a change. I'll not say breakdown, to be honest. We are going through a change in the whole society when it comes to relationship. Dynamics are changing between parents and children. Dynamics are changing between siblings. Running away from this particular situation is not really the answer. If you're not being understood, you should take the courage and take the small step, like you said, to make your viewpoint being heard, right? You don't need to be accepted and given a bravado for everything that you do, right? But at the same time, you should have that voice and give that voice out to the rest, to make them understand that yes, I am my own version, and I will continue to be that. But don't run away from the situation and abandon people just like that, because these are very special relationships that we have created, right?
Yeah. With that, I would like to say is that we've spoken about soul journey and all of that. We choose our parents and we choose which family to get into, right? So we choose our families and our parents and our siblings. Understand that these are our roots, all right? And we are a plant. So imagine if you cut off the plant from the roots, will the plant grow? All right, it needs roots. So it's very important to be connected to our roots. We can always choose what we want to take from that. All right, we just because okay we're labeled as the certain as a responsibility or as a rebel or whatever that is, doesn't have to continue. That is an autopilot that we're working on. That doesn't have to be your reality. As you mature and as you understand yourself better, you know that you can be who you truly are and not those labels. At the same time, it doesn't mean that you cut off from your roots. Your siblings or your parents are your roots. That's where you actually grew from. You can be connected with them, be kind, be respectful, even if it's toxic or whatever. At the same time, have your boundaries and be yourself.
And have that conversation and forgive them and let go. That's been our standing theme, right? Just forgive them because they did what they thought was right. At that age, they did what they felt was probably what they'd seen and what they understood and what they created in their head as for themselves. Even for each one of them, forgiving each one of them is extremely important, right? Somewhere, if they've done harm, they've also done some good. So let's embrace the good and forgive them for the harm.
Very true. Very true. There's always a learning. As I always say, there's always good in everything. Some people may think of being extremely optimistic or positive, but it's the way you look at it, the point of view. Absolutely. So maybe, your elder or your sibling bullying you was actually trying to teach you to stand up for yourself in the future. Or the person being responsible is actually teaching you who's over responsible, was learning responsibility, just needed to have boundaries in terms of being responsible for self rather than everyone else, not to take a burden of the whole world. So there's always a learning. There is always something good in every experience that we have. And yeah, that's how we be connected. So if we be connected to the good in our roots and weed off
Absolutely.
the whatever is negative.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tanveer. It was a wonderful conversation. I think
Thank you,
this was a
Abby. It
much
was really wonderful.
conversation, and we learn each day and hope to have many more conversations like this, especially about relationships. Let's join back for the next episode where we deep dive about another aspect of a relationship.
Yes. See you next week and goodbye.